Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2024 Hispanic Farmers and Agricultural Professionals Symposium. My name is Nolo Martinez, and with my colleagues from mano-Y-ola and Asekia, we're hosting this annual event. This is our sixth symposium, and we have survived through pandemic, through doing it virtual, doing farm demonstrations. We've been in Louisiana, North Carolina, and we've been online. So you may hear this name Asekia. Asekia is actually our newest initiative, and that initiative basically is a nonprofit that is really focusing on the study, outreach education, advocacy, and support of farmers and landowners nationally. And our focus always been conservation. We're adding forest conservation. We're also very interested in the young Hispanic leadership development in agriculture. Many of the folks here are very young, and they continue to be young, but I think it's because of conservation and agriculture. We also like to leave a mark and a legacy and bringing some new energy to not only USDA, but agriculture in general across all kinds of different spaces. During our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, we really like to pause and talk about the contributions of Hispanics in agriculture. That's why we do this. On the last census, if those of you would like to start with numbers, we have over 110,000 Hispanic producers in the United States. Very diverse. We are producing in around 37 million acres. We're contributing about $33 billion to the agriculture of the United States in sales. And if you think about states, many people don't know much about where these producers are, but we know, and they've been there for many years, some of them a very long time, many generations. You have to think about Texas, California, New Mexico, Florida. One of the things that we don't see in the census is Puerto Rico, and they certainly contribute to agriculture, have been contributing to agriculture for a long time. We have New Mexico, Florida, and Puerto Rico represented in this panel. About 40% of the Hispanic producers are beginning farmers. So that's definitely a plus. 76% of the Hispanic farms have internet access. So that's important for the outreach, for us to know that we can get to them using technology, adopting technology from drones and other software that is important in the farm today. And 34% of those Hispanics are in cattle and dairy. About 11,000 of those producers are specializing in fruits, nuts, berries. Anyway, we didn't say much about the numbers in Puerto Rico, but according to the latest census, 2022, there are about 76 farms on the island. And that's about, we measure it in cuerdas, but that's about, in terms of acreage, it's about 450,000 acres that are in agriculture on the island. So anyway, we are celebrating Hispanics in agriculture. Many of you know that from farm workers, producers, landowners, professionals like the one you're going to meet today are involved in feeding America every day. Growing crops, managing forests, taking care of natural resources, and driving innovation and resilience. We have been involved in climate smart, and we are. So there's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of culture. There's a lot of pride, and we're celebrating that. Many people don't know, but I can talk about George Melendez Wright. He was a Salvadorian, a Latino professional in the National Park Service that started that work early on wildlife conservation and the help of national park. So that's who we are, and that's what we're celebrating. And I'm really happy to see you guys here. Before we move into the panel, I wanted to recognize my right hand and left hand and a person that has been involved with conservation for many years, and he's going to help me facilitate and coordinate the conversation today is Maelo Reyes. Maelo, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the symposium today. This is an amazing experience, and I hope everybody enjoys it, not only the attendees, but everybody here at the panel. Have a great time with the conversation we want to start today. There's so many things happening in such a time as this. There are so many shifting things happening in the conversation today, especially with this panel that we have today. We're excited about listening and learning from you what's new, what's going on, what are the challenges, and how you're working on it. As far as myself, this is, I believe, my 39th year in my career, maybe 40. And yeah, maybe my 40th year in my career. I worked with NRCS for 30 something years, worked private for a few other years. And I've been most of my career within South Florida and Central America, done some work over there, and it's been exciting. And now recently, working with mano-Y-ola as a senior conservation advisor, it has been possibly the icing on the cake. Think about it, to be able to work with this organization and to do what Nolo was just mentioning. How do we can whatever is already happening good with NRCS, how can we make it even better? How can we even push it farther and not limit it to barriers or boundaries, but open it up to the world, to what we can do for conservation. So working with this group has been exciting for us. And that's where we are right now. And I'd like to get started with Frank, because Frank, I haven't had just the chance to really meet you personally. I'd love to do that. And I'll start with you because of your background. You decided to put some kind of a soil profile right behind you, you know? So you begin to touch my soil scientist heart right now. It was my first position with NRCS as a soil scientist. Right now, I'm a agricultural conservation experience service provider for NRCS as a resource soil scientist for compliance. And your background got me all started. You know, I'm going to blame it on you. All right. Many things are happening. And I'd like to open with this question. In your experience, many things go really nice, and sometimes you take excitement in promoting how look what we did, you know, look how far we got, you know, in Puerto Rico, within your location, you probably say things like that. But I'm going to ask you this: what are your challenges? What are those conservation challenges that you guys are facing right now?
Thank you, Maelo and Nolo, and all the participants here for the invitation. For me, it's an honor to be here. And I'll get to your question here in a second. I just want to introduce myself real quick. My name is Fran Velasquez. I'm the acting director for the Caribbean area, substituting Luis Cruz. He's in the detail until maybe a couple more months. But my original position is the assistant state for field operation here in the Caribbean area. So we cover Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, so St. John, St. Thomas, and St. Croix. So with that, I'll get to your question. So in the Caribbean, we have facing many challenges since Maria. I got here in 2018. I spent part of my career in Michigan. I've been 22 years with the agency. And the Caribbean is very interesting because this is one of the islands that has a rainforest and a dry forest within the same footprints, taking in consideration that the island technically is 100 miles by 35 miles. Now, with that, the challenger are is that the increasing frequency of the hurricanes and the storm has put a challenge in the agency because, frankly, most of the farm bill has been developed with taking in consideration row crop and Midwest or Central United States. So adapting what is the across the nation the standard for keeping conservation to a location that the topography, the weather, the economy has an impact and it's a very fast pace compared to other states. The other challenge that we face is that since we have to import most of our goods and services for having hard conservation practice, and I want to put into lay terms, NRCS has two components. We do conservation practices for management, so nutrient management, pest management, and then we have engineering or structural practices that are like a pond, like a roof, like a heavy use area that's made out of concrete, fencing. Those are permanent practices that they're tangible. You can see it, you can touch it. So in Puerto Rico and in any Virgin Island, the problem we have is that by the time we develop a contract to the time that we implement that practice, it might be a year. And that can be an issue when the the materials for putting that fence are not in the island because there's no stock for it. So that along with inflation in the island is a very it's a very hard impact for the landowner and it's out of his control or her control. So what we're trying to do is trying to adapt those conservation practices to our current scenario here in the Caribbean and make it more flexibility by doing local partnership with climate smart customers and NGOs, local government agency to expand that. So that way we can reach out more people and be more efficient at the time of doing the conservation practice and actually put the practice in the ground.
Yeah, I'll see that. But Christine, before you jump into the question, I would like to hear your introduction. So we'd like people that are listening to get to know you a little better, like Frank did. And Brenda, I'll leave you to, please.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Christine Graham Chavez. I am an assistant state conservationist for partnerships. I'm in New Mexico. I've worked all over New Mexico, Arizona, and on the regional conservationist staff with national headquarters located in Texas. But I'm back in New Mexico and I work with quite a few partners throughout the state and of course nationally. The biggest challenge that I think that we have faced is, as Frank was talking about practices and things that we offer to people and to producers is that eligibility, that people have to be either land eligible, the people have to be eligible, and then the land has to be eligible. So we have some organizations that are, very old. We have land grants that were grants from the King of Spain and then further from Mexico. So people were granted land to operate as a community. And then we also have Asekias, which still operate the way they did back in the, 1700s, self-governing irrigation ditches. And so what happened was when they wrote the Farm Bill throughout the years, they were not eligible in the last Farm Bill. Asekias and land grants because they are entities of the state. So we couldn't change the rules. So what we had to do, we worked with quite a few people to say, okay, these are the things, that's the big challenge. We're not being able to service a huge part of our ranching and farming community because of eligibility. And so working with folks at headquarters, we were able to change that. So in the next farm bill, it worked out fantastic. So those are, challenges. The farm bill is written and it's got a lot of different moving parts to it. And so, you can't think of everything when writing a farm bill. So little by little, things start coming, come to the surface. And so that was one of our biggest challenges.
Yeah. Brenda Lee, before you introduce yourself, me being part of Florida, we've seen some of that. Christine, interesting that we have asked this question before, especially in the field. Very seldom you see people seeing the Farm Bill itself as part of the challenge. When you ask for conservation challenges, you see the challenge on a day-to-day right on the farm as you deal with it because they are there. They're actually palpable. You can see it, you can touch it, like Frank said. But seeing the Farm Bill as it is, a solution to many things, but at the same time, a challenge. Because it's just impossible to meet all the needs we want law. We want bill. And Brenda Lee, now to you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brenda Lee Rodriguez Munoz, and I am in Florida, like you said, Maelo. I worked at the Mariana Field Office, and I am a program specialist. I've been with the agency over 10 years, and I've been working through other states like Missouri, Illinois, Georgia, and now Florida. Obviously, here today we're going to talk about some of the challenges in Florida, and I'm going to echo Frank's statements because it is exactly what it's been a challenge in Florida. For the past few years, we have had some sort of storm or hurricane that had affected Florida producers almost yearly. And we have developed a strategy where it focuses only on disaster. When we talked about the programs and making the programs work for us, we wanted something that can be done in a very quick manner. Like Frank says, also some of our programs you can apply today and it may take a year. Well, when you're in a disaster in that specific moment, you must act quickly. And with identifying specific practices have been a great method for us to be like, these are the practices that we're going to assist the producers that have been affected. If there is any case specific, then we can make changes to some of those disaster programs. We have actually seen how the weather resilience has been affecting the soils, right? How can we manage that amount of moisture that is coming, all that rain? Sometimes we don't have enough rain. Sometimes we have way too much rain in a matter of hours because of these storms. And so trying to mitigate that through our then regular EQIP or CSP programs, trying to provide climate health or soil health practices to cover those soils and trying to increase that organic matter in those soils, and then come in with assistance on top with like the hurricane strategies where it's just addressing that specific disaster. So we have used both strategies for the immediate action and then for the long-term action. And I hate to be the person to bring this up, but we still have that barrier of the language. Once the producers in the area have identified someone that is in the NRCS local office that can speak Spanish, it's like they come to us, right? We navigate to each other and they come in and they actually start talking to most of our employees that are bilinguals. So those are the two challenges between the constant disasters, the depletion of the organic matter in our soils, and obviously the language barrier that we've been facing.
Yeah. Interesting, Brenda Lee, because you bring a point and you bring me to my next point that I wanted to bring up. I see these challenges. I see how Puerto Rico has these challenges. I see, Christine, what you were mentioning, it's just similar to what we went through with the Seminole Indians here. We got this Farm Bill, this amazing tool. We can get so many things done, but all of a sudden there's this one thing we can't get the door open for a particular client. In this case, in Florida, we had it with the Seminole tribe, and the tribe belongs to the government. In essence, the land is registered to the United States government. And then trying to get them to qualify was difficult. And we came up with ideas and we solved the problem, but it was challenging. But let me ask you this. How do you narrow down to the Hispanic community in right there where you are in New Mexico? How is this same challenge that you just mentioned? How does it pertain to the Hispanic community? And Brenda Lee and Frank, in your case, Frank, probably everybody in the island, but think about the same question, and then we'll go in that order. Then after Christina, I want to hear Brenda Lee on this.
You hear me okay?
You want me to go next?
Yeah, Christine, I'm going to get started with you. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about
Yeah.
that. Well, we have different organizations that help us. New Mexico Asekia Association, we have the land grant organizations. So they have been very instrumental in helping us to draft language that will help with the eligibility issues. But then there are also the ones that organize for us to be able to go into those communities and have meetings, have workshops. We will go like the morning part. We will go actually do kind of the explaining what our programs do and how we can help. We take our farm service agency, rural development, risk management agency with us. And in that way, because we're all kind of intertwined, they have to get a farm number and a track number from farm service agency. And then also so that they can explain their programs and what they have to offer. So we'll do that kind of in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we'll do a little workshop on the forms that need to be filled out. And they can go to the individual agency and kind of get that paperwork started. And then later on, if we have time in the evening, depending on how we get through what the agenda is, then we'll take the rainfall simulator and show people, the actual soils. We take different soils from rangeland, from cropland, and we have a rainfall simulator that will go through and show the rain. And if you have grass on your property, just how much more water is absorbed into the soil and not eroding away. And then we have some that doesn't have any soil. So, those are kind of the things that we've been doing here. Definitely our partners with different organizations have been a key to getting us on the ground in some of these communities. As a federal agency, we're so focused on getting, going out, meeting people, doing things, but organizing, the actual getting the people together and getting the site and the location and then the outreach. That's a big critical thing for us. So we're able to get some of that stuff done.
Yeah. Brenda Lee, I noticed the language is something that sort of became a challenge, and you mentioned how people tend to go to the Hispanic person because they want to hear that translation or anything. And I want to ask you this: is there any other thing within Hispanics that you see as a barrier? Would culture be an issue, or the way they do farming, or like they like to do farming the way they did it in their country, and it's just not applicable? Have you seen things like that?
And actually, in our areas, it has been more like the new practices are new concepts, right? So our concepts that are things that probably weren't taught a few years ago, or even in school, or even to the previous generations. And so bringing them into understanding, okay, these are new challenges that we're facing. And so in order to address new challenges, you have to learn how to do things this way. So it's more of like the knowledge, how to share that knowledge of how to do it. It's more of the how to do it, not so much of like, oh, I know how to do this, let me get it done the way I know how to do it. Another challenge that actually raises more to the table is the amount of acreages. So we know a lot of producers that are working the farms, but they are able to purchase maybe a 5-acre lot or a 10-acre lot, and now they are landowners on that same county. But they think that because they have such a small farm, that they're not eligible for our programs, or that we cannot help them to get conservation on the ground. And so that comes to the table quite often, that they're like, oh, okay, I'm working for this farmer, but I also bought this 5 acres. There's something I can do with that. And so that is coming more common in at least the northern part of Florida, where producers are, or the workers are actually buying their own land and now finding out, oh, maybe I can do the same, just in a very, very smaller scale.
Yeah. Yeah, you brought a nice point, Brenda Lee, is the issue that even though a conservation practice in NRCS is not new, it has been an FOTG for the longest time.
Yeah.
When you bring it to some of these clients, it's new to them. To them, it's new technology. Is that I remember I installed back in the days, I was very young. I used to go to the barber at that time, I remember. And I installed the first contour coffee farm in mi barrio, in Ángeles de Utuado.
Uh-huh.
The people look at me funny and they say, what's wrong with this guy? And they used to tell my dad, see, you send him to college and now he's damaged.
Yeah.
But it was when the drought came and the contour farming was able to hold water and my crop looked amazing and everybody else was suffering, that farmers would stop by my house to ask me, how did you do it?
Yeah.
Why does the coffee? And so, Frank, do you still have that in Puerto Rico? Because come on, it's and when it comes to you're bringing stuff to a lot of farmers, and you might have this challenge with the hurricanes, but is needs conservation technology still a barrier sometimes? Like they don't want to do it, they're afraid to do it, or it's too new to them?
Yes, actually, we have, believe it or not, like you and Brenda, they were saying, this is nothing new. However, through the years, it's like a pendulum, you know. There's a different concept going on that they come out, that they bring it into, whether it's the university, whether it's NRCS. And for the longest time when I was in college, there was a push to grow more volume of coffee in Puerto Rico. And they were taking out the shade trade, the shade trees to bring more sunlight and have more production. However, when Maria came in, they realized, oh, we need the trees to protect the coffee. So now we're going back to, okay, we need native trees to provide shade and protection to the coffee orchard. So yeah, it is culture. I experienced this also in Michigan when I was there with the Hispanic community, even though the demographic is different. Farmers are very visual. And the strategy that we trying to do here in the Caribbean is to use some of those farmers as a leader to show them what is working. And I think I cannot say with 100% that it works, but it does makes an impact because it's not only an agency or the university bringing the data, it's also a farmer, a neighbor showing what is being implemented. And it's hard, like Brenda, they were saying also, it's hard to demonstrate in concept something that even though we have the data back it from many years, it's hard to show a landowner on their land how to do it and how it's going to benefit them. For example, cover crops. I always bring analysis to the farmer and say the soil is like the canvas. You need to have a good canvas so you can paint well. So you need to foster that soil. You need to bring the soil to a better organic matter, protect it, because that's where all your money goes. So you can, I'm very blunt with them. You can spend $100,000 on nitrogen, but if that pH is not balanced, it's not going anywhere, So bringing that kind of education alongside with different partners is the key to tackle those challenges. But it's a multiple issue that we have, and I think we'll continue to have because the agribusiness is very changing. And I will say that in the past 25 years, everything has been going fast paced for what I see.
Yeah, but the concept of a modeling farm in Puerto Rico also, I've seen it here. I wonder how in New Mexico it works, Christine, but I remember my dad would look to the farm next door, and whatever the farmer did next door, then the grass always looked greener on the other side. But whatever he's doing, I'm gonna try to do the same. There's a farmer here, and a lot of the ranchers here in Florida, because of the size of the ranch, they don't want to do a more intense rotation. But then we have this Hispanic farmer from Venezuela. He has this about 250 acres, and he's doing an intense rotation. He's doing a terrific job working with NRCS, implementing everything that NRCS is working. And now we have all the farmers, the non-Hispanic farmer, the big rancher, ask him, how do you do it? Why are your cows looking better than anybody else's cows? And on top of that, you always got plenty of grass, and we are running out of grass and buying hay. So this modeling farm really works. Christine, is that something that you see within Hispanics in New Mexico?
Absolutely. I see it in my community. I grew up in northern New Mexico in Taos. It's a small farming and ranching community, of course, tourist and skiing and things like that. But it's very cold in the winter. And so, the days are warm, but the nights get very, very cold, even in the summertime. But I do see that the demonstration plots and the demonstration farms are huge. Now there's different organizations that are going to different farms and ranches and showing people. They have a field day and they show exactly what you're talking about. The early adopters or the innovators that have adopted these practices of intense grazing, the rotational grazing, the different stuff, even for the Asekias, people that have done the turnouts and the Asekias are very old way of thinking, and now trying to get it all out and with the new practices and things is huge. And so with the organizations that are coming around and doing these demonstration plots, it is huge. And I see that as a big plus, because now they get to see it with their own eyes. They get to see, okay, a pipe isn't going to make that big of a change in their operation. But in reality, when they see it actually working, it is huge. It's a big plus for us. So
Yeah.
yes, the early adopters, the innovators, those are the people that you definitely want to go to first, and then set up a demonstration. So
Yeah.
very much a plus.
Brenda Lee used the term that is often used in all the trainings in NRCS, every meeting we go, every symposium we go. It's a conservation on the ground. Have you noticed how that term keeps floating around? It's about putting conservation on the ground. But there's another term that goes very well, perfectly joint with this thing that we're talking right now. It's the early adopters and things like that, and that is locally led conservation. Have you guys heard that term? So you have these terms in NRCS that have been very actually driving force in NRCS. Conservation on the ground. How can we get it there? How can we get it? And then you got locally led conservation. How do we get that early adopter? Where can we find it? And that's what Nolo comes in, because that's what mano-Y-ola is all about, outreach. So Nolo, I want to hear you bring these people to this outreach, because they already tap into it in their answers. And I'm sure you got more to add to this.
No, I think that the conversation is moving us to one area, which I appreciate the two things that are really important. One is there is history behind the work that you guys have done for the many years that you have done it. There always a change with the Farm Bill. There's always a change with leadership. For some of you, change in terms of the new state that you're going in. And so there's some things that are critical of the agency, the mission of putting, conservation on the ground. But I wanted to also talk a little bit about something that matters for me a lot more, and that is that for the Hispanics and the new folks that are coming in, I want to emphasize the concept of relationships. I think that there is an issue here that has changed. I have to give kudos to the leadership of NRCS. Many of the folks that are here because you have developed a relationship with us that really make me understand that it matters to you what quality uh, looks like on the ground in communities that are underserved. You know, what we have been able to do in New Mexico with the, it's kind of like a catalyst of our work, talking with Chris and getting names and getting people to go to immediately save us a lot of time. The same with Frank, who has started as a colleague, now as a friend. I want to hear, what is it about the agency today when it comes to relationships that you can see a much better future opportunities for those that are perhaps not knowledgeable or served in the traditional way the agency was serving? So what is it that is new that you can offer as an agency that you have seen over the years that built a much stronger relationship, whether it is partnerships, and you have mentioned some of them, but what's the new wave? Are you looking at it positively, or are you basically seeing this the same way it was when you started? And I'll start with Brenda Lee, and then I'll go around the clock, and I'll go with Chris and then Frank.
Yes, Nolo. Hi. Good to see you. I think that just the fact that is an acknowledgement, and I'm gonna go a little bit out of bounds here, but I think it was yesterday or the day before there was the celebration of the Hispanic year, the Hispanic month, and Miss Montaño was speaking, and she was giving a little she was giving the resources to the employees, that there's agencies that are providing trainings like NOPSI and other organizations. I can't remember, but she mentioned something really quick that it just hit me, and it was, growing up, she was told that there was no space for her within USDA. And now she is part of the leadership of USDA. And so acknowledging that we as Hispanics are a main component, not only to work with the farms, but also being part of the production for the food and fiber of the country, it's an amazing step forward that I see within the entire department, not only just within NRCS. And so the acknowledgement alone feels like a huge step to recognize that not only the producers that we serve are Hispanic, but also that we are here to serve them as the agency. I wanted to touch on some of the strategies, because you were mentioning, okay, what is it that we are doing as outreach? In Florida, for example, we were part of a event that was called the Food Culture Summit. It was in Tampa, Florida, back in May of 2024. And during that, we were serving and engaging the St. Pete community, having a table discussion about like what is NRCS has to offer to those producers within that area. That was one event that we participated as part of the outreach for Florida. We have also a Corporation for Community and Economic Development United Incorporation, and another organization called the KKAC. Those two have actually combined forces, and we have been reaching out to historically underserved or minority producers. And on that one, we do address Hispanic and other minorities that are also working with us. And one more example I want to provide is after Hurricane Ian, we identified a community leader where we were talking to that person specifically. And of course, there was no communication, right? So we were able to talk to that specific person, and that person talked to everybody else. And they say, hey, NRCS has this disaster program. They're trying to provide funding through these specific practices. Go to this person at this time, and they will be there to provide assistance. And so that was a very successful strategy that it turned out from a sad situation from Hurricane Ian into a very good one, because those clients then become permanent clients with us. They came in for just the disaster assistance, but then they realized, hey, we have this other gamma of practices that we can help them with. And so starting with the acknowledgement and all the way to understanding who is that community leader and how can we address that person that can show the rest of the producers how to reach out to us.
Chris, if you'd like to take on that one.
So I think that right now, what's happening with the agency, and some of the things, listening to those local people. I know that we've always listened, but then acting upon, going the extra step and actually listening and following up and saying, okay, this is not working for this area. Why is it not working? Well, maybe the practices are, they're just too rigid, or something that's broken there. But actually going and acting upon what we're hearing and saying, okay, let's see if we can maybe amend the practice. For instance, if there's a practice that they cannot attain the standards and specifications, what is it what's lacking here on our part that's not working? So I think that listening, acting upon, and using that local work group strategy, where we're asking them for their input and their assistance. Our soil and water conservation districts have been with us since way the beginning, and they have been able to get some of that information. But when we created the local work groups to have the community come in, and the different organizations and the different farmers and ranchers to act as an advisor to us, I think that has been a huge plus for us.
Thank you. Frank.
Yeah, I want to echo what Christine mentioned. I think the leadership throughout the years has noticed that our process and our law making the farm bill has been rigid in many cases. And the fact is that, the economy in every state is have changing, the culture has changed, the demographic of the farmer has changed, but the agency had issues adapting to those changes. And I think that building that relationship with local community, local NGOs, local farmer, even going to 4-H, FFA, that has that has been the key component to integrate the community in all regards. Whether it's for profit, not profit, we have now conservation innovation grant, whereas before that was very limited. Now we have RCPP, which is the Regional Conservation Partnership Program that started, a couple years ago. And now with the Climate Smart is another step further, because in my opinion, they have realized that if you take NRCS as a whole, which is 11,000 employees, by the numbers that we have for farmers and communities, there's no way we're going to serve them. That's just a fact. So having partnership and having strong relationship that will extend our same values to the community and, provide that outreach and provide those teaching, because in reality, we're trying to do culture changes. These conservation practices is to bring culture changes to the farmers and the community and to protect the natural resources. So with that, we cannot do it by ourselves or alone. We need the universities, local university, we need NGOs, we need everybody that have the same view as we have. That's what I think.
I'm going to make a comment. regarding to what you all said, and then I'm going to pass it to Milo to ask the next question, because I think you guys starting to open up on some of the innovation issues that I'd like for folks to hear. But I'll say something as a partner of NRCS. One of the benefits that we offer and that I feel we bring is also the fact that it's incumbent upon us, partners and community representatives, to expand what we learn from the relationship that we have built so they can also do it and not pretend that we can do the whole thing for folks in other states. So I think capacity building of nonprofits as we have received and the success that we have passing that forward is something that we need to do. Agency is going to be limited in doing that. So any Hispanic that is listening, any leader that is listening, is not so much demanding a lot of times from an agency that is going to have limitations. It's for us to pass it forward, and that's really important. So Milo, I know you have some questions about innovation, so I'll pass to you.
Yeah, thank you, Nolo. I'm listening to this conversation, especially how each one of you had articulated what's already happening. But I also like to thank you for clearly articulating the issues and what's already happening to solve those issues. But I want to push the three of you a little bit farther. And I want to hear from you because I hear a lot of answers, and that's great. One thing I hear that I really was longing to hear this a few years back from the agency, and I'm glad it's coming back. It is this fire, this desire to really believe in what we're doing. I don't think you can get people to believe in you if you don't really believe in what you do. When you truly believe that what you're doing is good, people want to believe along with you. And that's something that NRCS is, I think this new generation of conservationists that are coming into the agency, people like you are bringing that desire to really, what we're doing is good. And we want you to do it along with us. It's not like I'm telling you what to do. We want to work it together. And to bring that sort of mentality to the clients, it's amazing because now they want to believe as well. But I'll push it to the next level now. I want to ask you, what would you do new? What would you do different? Because a lot of good things are happening. And when a lot of good things are happening, a lot of outreach, I see the agency is bringing a lot of new people, and diversity, and a lot of things are looking good. But at the same time, what would you, Frank, what would you, Christine, what Brenda Lee, what would you do different than what's happening today? What's innovative in your outreach that you would like to see? And I'll start with Frank.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's a very good question. What would I do new? Boy, that's hard. There's many limitations that we have as an agency that is bound by law that we cannot change, that I will definitely like to change. That's on me personal level, right? So something as simple as having a drone, especially in areas where we have hurricanes, where we have, a rain event can change the course of a gut, can change the course of a creek or river. The meander can change. And even though we have aerial images throughout the years, having an instant aerial photo, having drones is something that will help out. Now, in that regard, we do have partnership with the local conservation district. We have done the drones, but I will say that keep bringing more flexibility to the programs. I think that what we have seen in the past, I want to say 10 to 15 years, that flexibility that has been given to the state, has been given to the nonprofits and for-profit NGOs, has expanded our reach on the impact that we do on the conservation planning. So, with us, it's hard to provide the education to the farmer on bringing those changes. So I'll give you an example real quick. In concept, it's easy to tell a farmer, your farm right now is 10 acres, plant 50 trees and 50 native trees. there's not much to say, but to a farmer to explain that his production is gonna be lower because there's going to be more shade, but the benefit is that he has to spend less money on nutrient. He has less risk of losing those trees when the hurricane comes. It's a hard concept to explain. And the reality is, out of the year, we need constant education to those farmers to be there with them. And having this flexibility of having integration of communities and leaders to provide that technical assistance is key to have the continuation of the education. Because yes, I can do an outreach event once a year, but the reality is, if I don't continue doing that, doing that follow up, keeping in perspective the landowner, and be there with them, that can easily change because is their industry, is their enterprise. We're here just to serve as an advisor, if you will. But everything that we do is voluntary, it's not enforced. So
Mhm.
part of that is having, I would say, to wrap it up, continue to be the farm bill, to continue to be more flexible towards the possibility of what we can do with partnership, and with flexibility with conservation practices and prices that we put into those practices.
I noticed something you bring up. And I'm gonna sort of, if I say wrong, please correct me. But you see the need to have more presence with the farmer, like, because you mentioned continuing education and continue teaching the farmer, but that takes time. That
Correct.
takes you into the field more time than you are probably doing right now.
Correct.
So when you mention program flexibility, it's not necessarily flexibility for clients, but flexibility for us or for you as a planner.
Correct. For us,
Yes, if
planner,
you can have more flexibility, maybe the policy would be easier, more palatable for less paperwork. Let's say it.
exactly.
If you have 30 more minutes to spend with the farmer, that's 30 minutes you don't have to spend on a job sheet or an implementation sheet or another contract document. Christine, do you go through that as well?
We do. And, we have some employees that are very rigid and say, okay, this is what it says in the manual. And sometimes, we have to follow the sideboards. We kind of read through and say, okay, we interpret things that are written. And if it says you shall, well, then we understand, okay, we need to make sure that we follow and shall do this or shall not do this. But some of the things that are written, kind of vaguely, I think, it does give us a little bit of opportunity for us to kind of read it and make our own interpretation. I think some things are a little bit easier to implement if we have that flexibility. I think, Frank touched on that, and I think that is exactly what we need to continue doing. We definitely have to use the practices that are there, but sometimes they're written for the Midwest or they're written for a certain area. And so being able to, use those practice guidelines, but then kind of make them specific to a certain area, allowing that flexibility, I think is the key for us right now. I think we're going towards that as an agency. There are definitely some things you shall and you shall not do, but there's some things that are left for us to interpret, and I do like that. Then we're able to put those conservation practices on the ground.
Yeah. You mentioned partnership. You mentioned a lot of things that are already happening in New Mexico. What would you do different from what you're doing right now as far as outreach, especially to those historically underserved communities?
I think what I would do is train a lot of our partners to do what we're doing, because we're getting, especially like regional conservation partnership program. We have, $137 million in requests this year for that program. And we as an agency don't have that many people. We really don't. There's no way that we're going to be able to meet that demand if all of those get funded. So training the partners to be able to implement, and even if it's just to go out and survey and design certain practices, even if they don't get the certified conservation planner, but at least they're that much further along, and then we would just have to have a team to come in and review things. I think that is one of the things that we would do. I would do different.
I see a trend. I see a trend in what you're saying. Kind of back to Frank. It's like more foot on the ground, more people. On the ground. If NRCS cannot do it, then work with a partner that can do it. Get somebody else out there that's willing to do it. And
Right.
I think Frank said it right. If you look at NRCS overall, 11,000 employees are not enough to really get enough people in the ground to really touch and make the difference. And yet, even with the deficiency, it's amazing the level of conservation and progress in natural resources this agency achieved. Even with those challenges, it's amazing. And it's because of that belief. Because the agency and the people in the agency, people like you believe what you're doing. And sometimes the little bit that you do goes a long way because of the impact that this agency does. So in that line of thinking, Brenda Lee, what would you do different in Florida?
Milo, I am so
Remember, there
enjoying.
might be other people from Florida listening, so you may, be careful. No,
I
I'm
may
just
need to
kidding.
be concerned. No, I'm never concerned about that. I am so enjoying your question,
Blame it
and
on me.
I enjoy Frank and Christine's answers because my job is to read policy and interpret that policy. And Christine, you are correct. If it doesn't say you shall, we will interpret it the way that we can help as much as possible. So it is the way that we can take that policy and actually make it work with us, right? If I had the magic wand and I could bring in something, right? I truly believe in the RCPP program. So it is the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, because the innovation that can bring to any region is super flexible. There are no boundaries. You can get to write that program. If you obtain the grant, then you can bring in the employees, or you can bring in whatever technology it is that will be doing that conservation on the ground. I strongly believe in that because it gives away that flexibility that our regular EQIP or CSP programs don't have, right? So one example, and I will speak for one of the projects that we have here, and is some necklace, GPS necklace that the cattle can wears. And they have fields that are designed with a GPS map. And so they are allowed to graze within a certain area. And then with a change in the phone, the producer can allow the cattle to go to another pasture without the fences with those GPS units that they have in their neck. And so, and there has to be more details to that project, but I just found that project so innovative, so interesting, and new, that can bring not only employees with us, but also that technology that we can use to actually put that conservation on the ground. And with bringing new minds to the table can bring new ideas, right? The more diversity, the more different age, cultures, gender, and any type of employee that we can bring in that can bring a different perspective in order to address the same issues will help us actually do a better job. And so if the one was allow me to just make magic happen, I'll certainly try to produce more money into the RCPP program
He
to
told me he
bring
was
that
going to join. He's
flexibility
probably
to
listening
everybody.
to you right now.
What?
I bet you Juan is listening to you right now. He's probably
Oh, if he is, I'm pretty sure he's
just.
agreeing because you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know, I know that we can have this conversation for months, and we will. I first would like to thank you guys for agreeing to participate and celebrate agriculture with us. I want to say I learned quite a bit. We mentioned so many different things that are critical to this conversation, from the need to do more capacity building, ex expand the work that you guys do, listening, but acting to the listening. And Christian mentioned that the concept of trust matters a lot. It takes time, it takes reliability, credibility, familiarity. We're not a monolithic group. Hispanics in New Mexico, Hispanics in Florida, Hispanics in Puerto Rico, Hispanics everywhere have different important things to address from needs, but also important strengths that cannot be ignored, right? So that's important. And we also talked about the policy relevance. In many ways, it may not be relevant, from the land grant that was mentioned, to the eligibility that was mentioned, to the understanding of things that may not apply, to the time that it takes to get a policy, to put it in the ground, and is it relevant? All that said, it's important for us to continue this work together. I want to leave one thing, and this is for the next time we meet, which will be September 27th. We'll have a keynote, which happens to be a Hispanic woman leader, Monica Hernandez, will be our spotlight, talking about the remarkable achievements she has made. She is doing outstanding work in Louisiana and also getting in positions of leadership. So I hope that you guys come and join us in the theme and in the spirit of what we're doing, which is really this relationship. I would love to see a volunteer movement that elevates the capacity of many communities to be ambassadors of the agency. And if we can do that, we will love to help. But I want to thank Milo, my partner, colleague, for helping me with this panel. I'd like for you guys to follow us on YouTube, and this will be edited, and within a week, you'll be able to listen again the conversation that we just had, and we'll be running this throughout the Hispanic Heritage Month, which ends October 15th. And I wish you guys well, y gracias por la participación de todos. Hasta luego.